The Hidden Romance, High School, My Hidden Romance in High School, Kirby. Stories from my life. High School and the Hidden Romance, Stories from my life. Hello, y'all. I'm Dianna Brianne. Well, as y'all know, I've been telling little stories, bits and pieces of stories from my life. I don't always give all the details because I think that, too many details can bore a story, but also some details are left and kept for our own selves. And so, but I share what I want, and like I always say, share what you want when you tell your story. And I think some details, especially when it involves other people, should kind of be left alone and not shared with everyone, And then some details we can share. So I've been pretty much a very, very open book, telling you different stories from my life. They're not in chronological order, and it's been fun. Most of them have been very lighthearted stories. A few a little bit more serious. Not serious, I shouldn't call it serious. Few a little bit more not so light, let's just put it that way. But they're all great stories, like the story of taking care of mom when she got sick, or the story of going through a health crisis, and stories like that is what I mean by more serious. So, but most of them have been pretty lighthearted. We're having a beautiful day, and I went out for a 5-mile walk, not a run as I normally would do, but a 5-mile walk, and it was just beautiful. I went to my favorite antique store, and then I went grocery shopping again, and I am making kind of a healthy vegetable vegan soup. Now, you can't really tell all the vegetables in there, but that is diced up celery, and I've got onions and zucchini in there and tomatoes in there. I just put it on the stove, so it has to simmer for a few hours, and then it's like a very thick soup. I use a bag of lettuce when my lettuce starts to get old but still is good. I put a bag of lettuce in there, or lettuce if I have it, zucchini, green beans, tomatoes, onions, garlic, mostly green vegetables though that are non-starchy. And I call it my soul soup, or lettuce soup, or salad soup, and I've been eating it for years. It's a very healthy soup and very healing. And so I feel great today. I went to the grocery store, now I'm home, I'm doing little things, and I wanted to come on and tell another story. I forgot all about this story, and this is, my high school years were very, very challenging. I'm not gonna go into a lot of great detail. My mother remarried. She married a wonderful, wonderful man who was my stepfather. I talked about him in the story about taking care of mom. My mom was not in love with him, but he was an amazing man, a fantastic stepfather, and he was a great husband to her. And he was our stability after being through so many storms, so to speak. And my mother's very not so good marriage after my father, after daddy, she married a man briefly, and that was not a good situation. He was a drunk. And so then later, after that marriage, she married this wonderful man who was great reputation in the community. Everybody admired him, and he was a wonderful man, and he was an amazing stepfather. And later he was to pass away from cancer, but I'm so grateful for him, and that he came through our lives at the time that he did. So anyhow, I was in high school, and it was a very challenging and difficult time. We'd moved to another town, so I had to switch schools, and this town was it was a small town, but people were kind of very cliquish, and they stuck together with the kids that they had grown up with, and most people didn't move into that town. They were from that town, and so I wasn't from that town, even though my mom's husband was. It still didn't matter, you know what I'm saying? And it was very, very, I felt like an outsider and an outcast, and it was a very painful moments in that, in that part of my life. I was about 14. okay, about 14 years old. And I was going through my own things. And so in the house that was my stepfather's, he had, and later my parent, they would build another home, a brand new home. But this was a very nice home. And upstairs, he had built a mother-in-law suite for his previous mother-in-law who passed later, and he was a widower at some point later on down the line. But he went and he built this mother-in-law suite upstairs. So I essentially had my own apartment, and he really wanted, you know, I'd come down for dinner and things like that, but he really wanted my mother more to himself. And I just, you know, I was a teenager. I wanted to kind of be to myself too. So I would stay up there. I had one of those antique typewriters, and I would type and type and type. I had a typing book, and I became so good at typing. I typed and still do, about 120 words a minute. And all because of that time. It was like some people play the piano and learn the piano. I learned the typewriter. I would play the little 45 records, and I remember one, this is in the early 70s, but one later came, I think, called Jackie Blue. She Lives Her Life in a Room, and that really reminded me of my life at that time. Jackie Blue, she lived her life in her room. And I would open up these two big windows that kind of pulled out, and I would dance in front of the window because there was a cute neighbor, and he was my age, and he lived over there, and I always wanted to get his attention. I felt like I was Rapunzel, waiting for my prince to come by, and it was a lonely time. It was a lonely time. So let's go back to when I was 5 and 6, 5 years old. I had a little boyfriend called Kirby, and he played with baby dolls, and he was the rich little boy. If you go back to those stories, the little red record player story, and he was the rich little boy. We were the poor family, but we became best friends, and I would go over to his house and play with baby dolls, and we would play with games. He was Catholic. We were Protestant, so it was very, you know, if you were Protestant, you know, you just kind of didn't mix like that back then, Catholics and Protestants. Religion was a big factor in that small town, what church you went to. That was really the only factor in our town, was, you know, what your religion was. And people didn't look down on other people, but you just kind of, hung with the people you went to church with. And so anyhow, years later, I was 14, 15, 16, Kirby and I got back together because now the town that we were living in was closer by where we were originally, and, you know, just a mile or two away. And so Kirby began to come over, and he would come over and visit me quite often. Well, and then he got his driver's license when he was 16 and I was still 15. Okay, so he was 15. He was like 15 and I was 14, I think. But then I became 15 and he became 16. But he was really the only real close friend. I had some friends at that time that I just had met, but Kirby was my long-term friend, and Kirby had gotten really, really cute and really, really handsome and really, really good looking. So he would come over, and when he got his driver's license, he would come pick me up, and he had like a brand new Impala, silver Impala that his parents bought, but they didn't buy it for him, but he always got to use it. So he would come over and pick me up in the big brand new car, and we would go out on the country roads, and we would spend, you know, hours, you know, just being to ourselves, you know, out on those country roads. And you know, real country roads, like, you know, dirt roads, you know, by the lake or by, you know, out there like that. And so we had this hidden romance going on. It was a hidden romance because his parents wouldn't have approved for a couple different reasons, and it just wasn't something that we wanted to advertise. We just didn't want to advertise it. And so we kept this relationship top secret. Nobody knew about it. Even my mom and stepfather didn't know about it. They just knew that he came to visit and we played board games or whatever it is that we played. You know, not spin the bottle. That was a game that was quite often played back then. And, during that time when I wasn't with him, I would listen to the Catherine Kuhlman miracle services on the radio. I loved TV preachers, but we didn't have many TV preachers. We had mostly radio preachers. And I remember it every night at 9 o'clock, I would listen to her. I was, grew up with the Bible, and Grandma taught me the Bible. Most kids are out doing all kinds of stuff. And here I was listening to miracle services at 9 o'clock each night, or preachers preaching on the radio, and they always inspired me. And but I was lonely during that period of time, and so I really looked forward to Kirby's visits and our rendezvous. Our rendezvous together. That was my big thing. Our rendezvous together, and as we had a steamy romance, let's put it that way. It was steamy. And so his parents got a hold of some of the letters, the notes that we were writing back and forth to each other, because we'd write notes to each other and give them to each other after, right as he was dropping me off. And so I would give him my letters, and he'd give me his letters. Does that make sense? It was kind of our little thing that we did. Well, somehow his parents came across those letters, and that ended our relationship. Yes, we were to see each other years later, but at that moment in time, they sent him away to a boarding school, like a military type school. They sent him away. And so that ended our relationship. It ended our relationship. And we moved shortly thereafter because my parents built a brand new house. Remember, we had been the poor family. Now we were like the rich family. Rich in small towns is not all that rich, okay? If you have a new house or a nice house and a nice car, you're rich, okay? So we were like the rich family building a new house. And so he and I did connect after that. It wasn't the same because I was in a new school, and I had some other kind of friendships going on at that time while I was still in high school, until I left at around 17. After I graduated, I left, and I did that story called The Angel in the Trench Coat, or The Big Red Car. You have to kind of go back and look at the recent ones, but also from the ones from a year ago, and my first apartment and all that at 17, 18 years old. And so, but Kirby, he was the one we played baby dolls together. And now here we had reunited in high school. But it was a hidden romance. Now his parents knew that we were seeing each other, but they didn't know to the extent. They totally approved. They loved me, and they totally approved of me, but they didn't approve of the steamy relationship, okay? It was too steamy for them, and that's why they pulled him away. And he went on to be very successful. He did great for his life, and of course I went on with my life. But that was my really my high school years. They were I always say you can go back and fill in the blanks of your life later if you didn't get to complete it earlier. I mean, in the right sort of way, you get to go back. And so because I felt like I'd missed out on so much during my high school years, I went back later, like when I lived in Newport Beach. And I remember rollerblading on the beach, or roller skating on the beach, and doing all the fun things that I really missed out in a way in high school. And growing up too, because, remember, I had kind of a traumatic childhood with that, with all the different changes, the divorce with my mom and daddy, with the stepfather that was a drunk, and then my mom not being in a happy marriage with my stepfather that was wonderful. She wasn't happy in her marriage, but he was a wonderful family man. So we were very blessed from that aspect. So those years were kind of filled with not always the best of memories, although there were great memories out of it. Going to Grandma's house all the time, my friend Kirby, and let's see, and there were a lot of other, there's always good mixed in. And so I'm, sharing the good, and I did have other friends, Those other friends were various friends, and especially when we moved to the final school, I did make quite a few cute guy friends. And but there again, I left. I wasn't there very long, and I graduated and moved on. And but my relationship with Kirby was top secret. It was hidden. We didn't tell people. It was steamy. Those rendezvous out on the country roads in his brand new silver Impala when he was 16 and I was 15, out by the lake. It was just wonderful at that time, and that was a different time period. But that was high school, childhood, and like I said, those were bright spots in a childhood and high school years that otherwise, could have its challenging and difficult moments. And I think high school in itself is probably challenging and difficult. My favorite grade in school of all was first grade. I loved first grade. I had this wonderful, amazing teacher. I remember, and I would cry over every one of my teachers in grade school. Everyone, at the end of the year, about the third day before school was to let out, I would cry and cry and cry and write them letters, and I would go out and buy them a little gift. And I remember I took my allowance, I think it was $2 or $3, and I went to the store. I used to walk by myself to the store. We had like a store, we considered it like a mall, but it was just a store, and because we didn't have malls back then. And I would walk like 5 miles or 4 miles as, 6 years old. It was no big deal back then, in the early 60s. And I bought her a beach bag, a striped beach bag, my first grade teacher at the end of the year. And I wrote her letters all summer long, telling her how much I missed her. I got very attached to my teachers. Every one of them. I think there was one I didn't get attached to. I don't know what grade level that was, but I always was so attached to my teachers throughout grade school. And but it was challenging. My second grade teacher I loved too, because she used to knit and she showed us how to knit. I loved her too. And so but I started having more challenges when my mom married the drunken stepfather, not the good stepfather, but the drunken stepfather. And so I was starting to have challenges at school as a result, because kids would make fun because he would always wreck the cars. We'd get a brand new car at that point instead of an old car, but he'd go out and wreck it. So they used to call me the kid with the wrecked cars, the stepfather who wrecked all the cars. So it was challenging. So I had those challenging moments, and then into high school, making all these changes from one school to the next, and how sensitive that can be. And then not the happiest home life. With the good stepfather, he was wonderful, and it was a solid home, but my mom wasn't all that happy at that point. And so it made things a little more challenging and difficult. So that's why when Kirby re-entered, because I knew him when I was 5 years old and he was 6. When he re-entered when I was 14, and we had our secret romance, I really, really looked forward to that. I really, really did. And so that is just part of my life, part of my journey. I tell my stories, and we all have our stories. You share what you're comfortable sharing and don't share what you're not comfortable sharing. We don't owe everybody everything. And I think that there are details, especially when they involve other people, that it's good to be selective, because they should tell their own story. And if they're not here with you to tell the story, then, even though it may be a great story to tell, sometimes you just keep those stories to yourself. They're personal. And it can be a wonderful story. You're not hiding something. It's just that it's more of a personal story. And so I won't give you all the details of Kirby and I, okay? I'm not going to give you all those details. But he was a bright spot in my very challenging and difficult time. And I remember, in my room, I would watch shows like MASH. MASH was very popular back then. I didn't really like MASH, but it came on. And all those early 70s shows like the Mary Tyler Moore Show and all that. But I was really into listening to the miracle services and Bible studies on the radio. And that was my highlight, usually at 9 o'clock at night, because Kirby usually came during the day, the earlier part of the day. And he didn't come every day, but he came often. And then I would sometimes walk on the train tracks to go visit some friends and watch the Waltons on TV. I remember the Waltons was very big back then. And So that was that period of my life. And like I said, there, I don't share everything. I share a lot. I probably shared a tremendous amount, probably far more than most people ever do. But I think some things, especially like when it comes to, like I said, other people and your relationships with them, I think that sometimes it's good to hold back, or if you are going to talk about it, kind of change the situation a little bit so the details are not there to show who that person is or whatever. You can change the name of the person, or change the location, or even the time period, or even some insignificant details. And so that, because other people have a right to their story too, and if you're part of their story and they're part of your story, I like to just keep that part private. But that was my part about Kirby. Okay. Well, from my house to yours, from my story to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe to all 5 of my channels. Links are pinned at the top of the comment section below. If you connect with me, I will likely connect with you as well. Hope to talk to you then. Bye-bye. Porch, a place to relax and a place to enjoy.